This is the eLearn Podcast, episode number 78.
I threw up this awful website. I mean, it was really, really bad. My wife was the first teacher, so I was answering the emails. And that's how we started. Within a month, swine flu passed. Our school was fully booked again. But within 3 to 6 months, we were making more money off of our online school, which eventually grew into Live Lingua today. We're one of the top 5 online language schools in the world. And we're the only one who's been built with no big VC or venture capital backing. So we're kind of the only mom and pop in the big 5.
Welcome to the eLearn Podcast. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. My guest for today is Ray Blakney, an edu-preneur and founder of Live Lingua, a one-on-one online language learning service. In 2015, Live Lingua was named among the best 360 entrepreneurial companies in America by Entrepreneur magazine. In this very robust conversation, Ray and I talk about languages, why they're so important for all kinds of reasons, including economic, cognitive, and cultural, why they're so hard to learn, but also the many ways technology has changed the language learning game and will continue to do so. We also talk about why passion continues to be a key predictor of teaching quality, and why ventures like Ray's, stemming out of a soul-searching life decision, could be increasingly common among teachers today. We also talk about the Great Resignation in education, which, paired up with online learning, could mean a lot more EdTechpreneurs in some parts of the world, and a lot more overseas teaching and tutors playing an increasingly larger role in the education of others. And then finally, Ray talks about what he believes are the reasons why higher ed sucks, and consequently, why radical new forms of teaching are showing up with significantly better measurable outcomes. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The eLearning Podcast is sponsored by the eLearn Success Series, a uniquely valuable set of events that bring together sector experts and thought leaders to offer solutions to the most critical challenges and issues at the intersection of education and technology. Get your free ticket to all 4 sessions at elearnsuccessseries.com. And OpenLMS, a company that provides world-class LMS solutions that empower organizations to meet education and workplace learning needs. Learn more by visiting openlms.net.
Hello, Ray. Welcome to the eLearning Podcast. How are you today?
Not too bad, Ladek. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. You know, one of the things that I love is that I get to talk to people all over the world on this show. And the coolest thing is that you're only like 2 hours away, like 3 hours away from me right now? Like,
depends on how fast you drive, really. It's Mexico, so it's like speed limits are a little, subjective. So you could do it in like an hour and a half if you really want to, risk your life.
Challenge accepted. Where's my, one of the things I've also found really fascinating here in Mexico is the obsession with motorcycles. Holy smokes, people like those motorcycles here. And
they go fast in those. I mean, yeah, I'm not a slow driver, but I'm in a car. It feels like I'm standing still when those guys pass me on the highway.
I hate to admit my conservativeness in that particular realm, but boy, no way, man.
I'm the same.
You are the founder of Live Lingua, which is a language learning. I'm just going to call it. It's a language learning empire. It's been around for quite a while, and it's very successful. Why don't you, I've teed you up in the introduction. I've talked, sort of given people bullet points, but why don't you give us the 30 seconds on who are you and what is Live Lingua about?
Yeah, sure. So I like to start with the elevator spiel of I'm the average Filipino American who grew up in Turkey, whose dad grew up in Africa, right? So that's kind of my background. Went to university in the United States. And then after working as a software engineer for a few years, I decided, hey, this is boring. So why don't I quit my well-paying job and join the Peace Corps? And so I started making $150 a month. And I moved to Mexico, where I got reacquainted with language learning and the love of it. So I grew up speaking multiple languages, but I hated learning languages, ironically, right? So in school, I remember I had French. I went to the, international baccalaureate school systems where I was raised, and French was like the second language they taught everybody. The school was in English, and French was the second language. I hated it. Like conjugating être, I can barely remember how to do that to this day. Like 12 years, I mean, the only C I've ever pulled off in my life was in French class, right? But I came to Mexico and I started learning languages and found out I loved it. If the conditions are right. And I know everybody listening here is an educator, so there's a big difference between kind of learning and enjoying it. Makes a huge difference in how much you retain when you actually see the point. So after I finished my time in the Peace Corps, I actually married one of my Spanish teachers, and we decided, hey,
And
let's not move
once
back to
again,
the
for
US.
our audience that is mostly educators, do not do that. But no,
If they're single, if you're in your early 20s, yeah, there's no problem, and the other person's single. So,
Sure.
and we decided, hey, before going back to the US, because our plan, one of my initial plan was if you studied in the Peace Corps, you can go back to the US and get a master's, and a lot of schools give you full scholarships for doing it. So that was my initial plan. Before doing that, why don't we see if we can just kind of do something ourselves? So the first thing my wife and I did was we kind of combined our skills and we opened a school. So we had a brick and mortar school, language school. From there, Live Lingua was born during the swine flu, because our brick and mortar language school suddenly had to close the doors for about 4 to 6 weeks. We were just starting off. We had almost no cash flow. So we decided to offer online classes. This is 2008. So almost nobody classes via Skype. What a revolutionary idea, right? Yeah. So I threw up this awful website. I mean, it was really, really bad. My wife was the first teacher, so I was answering the emails. And that's how we started. Within a month, swine flu passed. Our school was fully booked again. But within 3 to 6 months, we were making more money off of our online school, which eventually grew into Live Lingua today. We're one of the top 5 online language schools in the world. And we're the only one who's been built with no big VC or venture capital backing. So we're kind of the only mom and pop in the big 5.
So what does that mean? I'm just going to start right there. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean to you? It means you control everything. It means that you, do you feel like you compete against 4 other giants?
Great question. Yeah, there's multiple sides to it. So we do feel like we compete against 4 other giants, but there's also a difference in our mindset when we're doing it. We can actually focus on quality of the education, because I don't have to pay back a venture capitalist $10 million or something like that, because they're looking for an exit in a company in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? We're not. I live in Mexico. Live Lingua is a US company. It's based out of Boston, but we're 100% virtual. So we have no office rent. We have none of that. I need enough to support a middle-class life in Mexico for me and my wife. And then the rest we can put back into that so that our students get the best quality education they can. That's very different if you have, again, a venture capitalist behind you who couldn't care less about your students. They just want you to get as many new clients as possible, charge as much as possible, and make as much money as possible. So that's what distinguishes us from a lot of the competitors. We try to stay boutique. We have a few thousand students every month, but I'm sure our competition has maybe 20,000 students a month, and we change between 3 to 5, which makes us, considerably smaller. And we get to know our students, and everybody has somebody assigned, like a student director. We've structured it exactly like a regular school. We have student advisors, we have academic directors, we have all of that kind of stuff. We're not just a website where you find a tutor and you kind of just, okay, good luck with your tutor. They may or may not be good at what they do.
And then distinguish that, because we live in the app universe now. So distinguish that between like a Duolingo, which is something everybody's familiar with, probably the largest or most popular language company in the world.
The most popular downloaded app in the world. Forget about language. It's across the whole board. It is the most downloaded app on iTunes.
That professor, what's his name? Because he was up in Boston too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The guy.
Well, he has started a really successful company before too. So he went into it with a whole lot of money, and he's like, he didn't need that much venture at the beginning.
Great idea. So, but juxtapose that. So but you're not an app. You're not
not at all. So what we do at Live Lingua is we actually pair you up with live tutors on, we started with Skype. Now we primarily do most of the classes on Zoom. That transition actually happened in COVID. Until COVID started, most people were on Skype, and then Zoom became just so common that everybody started requesting Zoom. So that's the primary thing. We pair you up with native teachers, not just tutors, native teachers of whatever language you're trying to learn. So if you want a Spanish teacher from Mexico, because you travel a lot to Mexico, you will get your Spanish teacher from Mexico. If you have a standard, Colombia, Argentina, Spain, we'll do that. We have Japanese, we have Chinese, we have French. We have the 11 most spoken languages in the world, and we have tutors in all of them, and we will kind of pair you up with them. These are teachers, and they work for us. It's not, just hourly people who kind of come in whenever they feel like it to give some classes. They work for us. They have to go through training with us. They have to go through preparation for the class with us. They work through curriculums. They have regular evaluations. Again, all you educators who are listening, you'll be very familiar with what we did. We did not reinvent the wheel. We just applied that wheel to an online business. The reason a lot of these other online businesses don't do it, it's a lot harder to scale. Right? If all you do is build a website, like some of our competitors, which is just a directory where anybody can sign up to teach English, to teach Spanish, to teach French, you can't really scale that with now you need evaluations every 3 months to see how you're doing, and we talk to the students and all the rest of it. It's kind of a different system. But since we don't have, we have no loans. I've never taken a loan. We have no bootstrap, none of that kind of stuff. We're able to do that it might slow our growth, but I think, I'm much prouder to be part of this organization than I would be if we're 10 times bigger and our classes were off.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, many people who are listening is like, so how was your business affected by COVID? Over the last, taking me over the last 24 months, I think a lot of people had a lot of free time. And so language classes kind of went through the roof, but at the same time, I don't know. You were already virtual, so maybe you didn't struggle with it at all. So we
grew 50% in 3 months.
Sorry, say it again. I talked over you there.
Yeah, no, we grew 50% in 3 months, 90 days from the March when COVID did. We had this huge spike. It actually worked out on two sides for us. So you're right. Everybody was stuck at home. I might as well learn Mandarin, Chinese, or improve on something like that. So a lot of people took that route. And on the flip side, a lot of teachers just became, had no work. So we usually get about 100 to 200 applicants every month. Without us, we don't actually promote or anything, right? We're well known enough that people just kind of come and apply for us. Almost broke our system. I mean, we had that month, we had 3,000 people applying that month. And we have one person who's filtering those, which usually, 200 a month, about 10 a day. You go through it. We had to all hands, our entire academic team started going through the HR. There was no way they were just coming in faster than we could, put them in the buckets for these are qualified for possible future interview, and these are unqualified, and just kind of get rid of them out of the system. Out of those 100 to apply, usually only about 3 to 5 are qualified anyway. So there's a lot of cleaning up to go into that. It's a lot of people are just, hey, I speak English. Can I teach?
Right.
And as a native English speaker myself, I can tell you, I couldn't teach you the first thing about how to, speak English. I barely know the difference between a verb and a noun. So, speaking a language does not mean you can teach it.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm interested. So literally before we're recording this on, the beginning of January here, so middle of January, 2022. Not 2 hours ago, a colleague of mine at OpenLMS sent me an email about a teacher shortage in the United States. One of the reasons why schools are going online is because of a teacher shortage, not even just because of COVID. And so now here you're saying, wait, they're flocking to me, so talk me through that. Is this part of the Great Resignation? Is this teachers flexing and saying, look, we deserve better and we can do better? There's other opportunities. What have you discovered in that kind of equation?
Yeah, so I guess teachers in the United States are not going to really like my answer. The way that we work is that almost every single teacher we have are not actually based in the United States. So the Great Resignation, and I do not have the data to back this up, is primarily a first world issue, right? In the sense that, there is no Great Resignation as far as I can tell where we live in Mexico, right? No. It's just not really a thing that's going on. Exactly.
Please give me a job tomorrow. Please.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where most of our teachers come from. Not Mexico, but from developing countries is generally where we hire from. This even includes English teachers. Now, that's not that the English teachers are not from the United States or the UK or all the rest of it. They live in developing countries. That's the differentiator for us. We give you the flexibility to live wherever you want and work.
Right.
And so what does that do? One, we pay way better than any local person would, right? We pay our teachers in Mexico as much as engineers at Google make.
Wow.
But by US standards, it's a steal.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's way less than anybody in the United States would make. So we still get way more people applying for our jobs because they know we treat them better. We're actual business, not just like an Upwork, a tutor directory. We pay you really well and we give you all the support you want. And that kind of goes around, our reputation as being a great place to work has kind of gone around. So that's, I think, what kind of brings people in to work with us. Our model wouldn't work necessarily in the United States, but one thing that might work for the US. So my wife's cousin just got a job in Dallas as a physical teacher. Well, just got about 3 or 4 years ago now, right? Dallas is doing something really interesting. They are actually creating a program because in Dallas, they need Spanish-speaking bilingual teachers. And as you said, even before COVID, they did not have enough of them.
Right.
So Dallas has a program where they will help you. They promote in Latin America, primarily Mexico, but the rest of Latin America, for bilingual teachers. They help them get their H-1B visas and they get them jobs at the school. And if you're in there for 3 years, they help you get your green card so you can stay around afterwards. And there are teachers flocking from Mexico to that school system right now. Highly qualified teachers with master's degrees, 15 years of teaching experience. So getting them up to speed is almost nothing. They have to pass a few tests that are Texas specific in order to get in there and get a TOEFL score of a certain amount. That is essentially what we do at Live Lingua. We get these great teachers from around the world. We're not limiting ourselves to our own little ecosystem. There is a shortage of teachers in North Dakota because they primarily look in North Dakota and maybe South Dakota, right? Trying to get people up there. But imagine, especially if you're a school administrator and the whole world suddenly became available to you for these online classes for your students. Do you think within your budget, you could find a great teacher to teach whatever the class is? I guarantee you could. If you were, and I know there's federal laws and all the rest of the stuff involved it's not as easy as that. But if that was a possibility, there are amazing teachers somewhere who are looking for a job who would work for a third, a quarter, 10% of what you can, your current budget happily, to support their family and give your students an excellent experience in the online space.
Well, you're also describing part of the disruption. It's not necessarily the Great Resignation, but it's that I absolutely adore and love. I'm fascinated by the disruption to the education system that COVID has brought on, right? And along with many other industries, but we focus on the education space. And so that's really most fascinating is, the flexing of student power as well, where it's like, hey, look, why am I showing up to the university campus again? Like give me and professors saying, wait a second, do I need to be there? Do I not need to be there? And we're still a long way from it all shaking out because we've had the retraction. People want, going back to campus. No, we're on campus. We're retaining the structure that we have. I'm just going to go there now. So what do you have a vision for, what you think 3 years from now looks like, or 5 years from now looks like? I mean, are we seeing a complete disruption of education entirely, or what?
Yes and no. And it depends on the people. And again, this is just totally my,
hey, I'm here to
exactly. I was about to say, I'm like
armchair coach, bro. Come on.
That's it. So let me give you a little bit more background about myself. I'm an engineer, but I come from a family of academics. My dad, my grandfather, my great-grandfather went to Harvard. 2 of them were professors there. My mom was a teacher. My wife's a teacher. My sister's been a teacher. So I'm the black sheep of the family that I'm not a teacher, right?
You build businesses, my friend.
Exactly. I am black sheep. I build businesses. But I have a strong background in the life of, living in an academic family, right? So school is always very important for me. It wasn't until late, but the thing is, I never liked learning because I was so forced on me the entire time. Now that I'm an entrepreneur and I get to learn because I want to, and I get to learn what I want for, to use today, tomorrow. I love learning. I don't stop. I learn all the time. Why do I bring this up? So what I think COVID might do for us is create that split, because we see it a little bit more. Europe is not as bad, but in the United States, it's like, that's the track, right? You go through kindergarten, you go to 12th grade, you go to college, you get a good job, you work. And that leaves a lot of people to fall through the cracks, right? A lot of people, just school is not, doesn't matter the way they work, the way they, their brain works. I learned much better by doing, and most of my school stuff was, more maybe rote memorization and kind of repeating stuff in there, which works for the people who's that system works for. I think what's going to happen as a result of COVID is more people are going to realize that. So it's not going to change the system because that system works for a certain group of people, but it has opened up this other possible system that may work for another group of people that previously were falling through the cracks. And that's what I hope comes out of COVID after all of this, right? This virtual learning, the extremes up in Alaska, right? I mean, they've been actually doing virtual learning there for years. It's just generally been like on, walkie-talkies and all the rest of it, because the students just live so far away from each other. Imagine the quality of classes that they can now have access to because the government's finally stepped in, bought everybody Chromebooks. So they now have high speed, trying to get as much high speed internet in the house as possible. Hopefully 5G will take care of that pretty soon. And then now everybody's going to have it. And it doesn't matter that I live in the middle of nowhere anymore. I have the same access to somebody who lives in downtown New York City to excellent education if I want it. And I think that's what it's actually going to do for the people who want. And we'll have to change the system a little bit for language learning. But school right now is like, 9 to 3, 9 to 1, 9 to 5, depending on what the school system you're in. Again, that doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
Maybe you could institute project-based learning online, right? Where we meet once a week for 3 hours, but by next Friday, I need a report that's based on this. Learn yourself. Mm-hmm. Go to Google, do the research, build it, go to YouTube, because the information is readily available. You don't need to be spoon-fed like, not to date ourselves, back in our day, it was, if it wasn't in the textbook, like, we really had no idea.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've only ever learned
myself.
on a Chromebook.
Exactly. I speak for myself, right? So that's kind of my long-winded answer as to where I would like to see education go. We keep the existing system, but now we have more options that people, and valid ones, don't look down on them because they learn, somebody went to school online. It's just as valid. It's just kind of,
I think that is really one of the, you hit the nail on the head. I want to give a shout out to a guy he's a presenter at the 2021 E-Learning Success Summit last April. His name's Zacheichenberry. He actually started a high school in South Carolina, if I remember correctly. But, and he took through the process of, look, we need an education system that is able to produce a lot of graduates, right? And so that's what our education, at least in North America, that's what our education system is built around. But at the same time, just as you've pointed out, there's lots of different options for this. So keep the machinery going, but let's do what we want, do what we do with everything else. Let's customize it, personalize it, give different options. Again, another speaker that we had, who his name is completely, I'm so embarrassed. Her name is escaping me right now. She was with, oh, well, I'll have to put it in the notes or anything like that. But she was pointing out, she came on with another professor, and they actually ran a test in their class where they basically gave the students 3 options. They said, look, you can do self-paced, you can do sort of middle touch, where we're going to give you kind of half the resources, but then there's going to be some required, sort of in-person stuff. And then there's going to be super high touch where it's like classes, kind of regularness and that. And they actually found that, people chose the pace they wanted to. Not only did completion rates just go through the roof, but like grades went through the roof. And like, basically people said, look, let me do it the way I want to do it. And this has nothing to do with learning styles or any of that bull crap. It was just like, people want to be able to have a choice, especially at the adult level, right? Because it's like, look, I've got 3 kids. I'm going to choose to take my classes at 9:00 at night, but I'm not here to pontificate, even though I just did. Right.
Yeah. And actually, I believe 100% what you're saying. For me in college, you can actually see where my A's are versus my B's based on whether the classes were project based.
Oh yeah.
Or, and whether they were lecture based. Straight 100%. A's and project based, barely squeaking by on B's on the other one. Because I'm like,
people always ask me, they're like, oh, wow, you've got these 3 degrees and you must really, you really like, I was like, no, I hate school. I did, it's all for the creds. You got to have the letters to get the job. But I worked every angle to get it done as fast as possible because I just couldn't stand the slow ticking clock of higher education,
Absolutely. I mean, just the rote memorization, of stuff that may or may not be useful to you in life. In life, you get to learn what you want and again, use it tomorrow. I love that. Like maybe it's that little, the monkey brain where like, I want that, I want the sugar because I want the instant gratification, but you can actually apply that to learning, right? Where, you learn something and you use it now. That's instantly gratifying. I think that's why so many people go to YouTube to learn it. My dad keeps telling the story. He was so proud of himself. My dad's 72, 73. He went on YouTube and fixed their washing machine for $15 when the company wanted to charge him $500 for it. He's like, I watched the YouTube video. I did it minute by minute. I took apart our washing machine, found the one broken piece, put it back. He spent all day doing it. Right.
I was say Tim Ferriss would not be impressed, but
exactly not efficient whatsoever. But it was instant gratification. Like every time 100%. He said, okay, unscrew the screw. He unscrewed that screw and the screw was unscrewed. I'm like, that's it. You can see exactly the results of your learning.
This takes us right back to Live Lingua, and where I what I really want to ask you is, how have you seen? So 2008, essentially, you started. Here we are. What is it? 13 years later? Holy smokes!
14-ish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, unbelievable, right? And so, one thing that I'd love to hear, sort of just real general overview, is how have you seen the online experience evolve? Right. So how has it changed at all? What's your secret sauce for, student retention? What's your secret sauce for getting people to, really like have those aha moments? Like, wait a second, I started at 0 and now I'm saying phrases, or, hey, I started at 0 and now wait a second, I just had a conversation. Like, what's your secret sauce for, like, first, let's start with how has your business changed over, let's just say, like the last 5 years? Is it like radically different, or have you really following the same model?
So I'll break it into 2 parts. So the 3 years, of the 5 years, the first 3 years, it didn't change very much, right? Because we were in the space. I would say over the last 14 years, there was a slow increase in like being a little more comfortable with these online calls, but it wasn't anything drastic. It was like, it was like 10% every year, nothing groundbreaking.
Sure.
It was COVID that did the, let's say the hockey stick.
Hockey stick, sure.
Exactly. It was just suddenly, boom, everybody, if I said Zoom 5 years ago, some people might know what I'm talking about. Now it's, up there with Google as far as just like a word we use to describe, let's Zoom later today, kind of thing, right? Skype's kind of fallen to the secondary space there. So that's the big change that I've seen specifically in the last 2 years is the acceptance of this online space as a valid learning medium. It has its issues, which is why the schools are having it. It's a lot less in the adult space, which is, we work with a lot of kids, but I'd say about 80% of our business is adults. It's a lot less restrictive in the adult space. Like, you and I are speaking, I see your face, I can read your expressions. That's enough for me. I sit in front of a computer 8 hours every day anyway. So doing it for like another hour for a class is not like this big mental leap for me. I understand if your kid's 5, my respects. I have a 2-year-old, unless we put on Blippi and the song, there's no way he's sitting in front of a computer screen for like more than 5 minutes. Right. So I think at the right age, this online thing is right. And that's the big change that we've had. We've seen a big growth actually in our senior students, which is interesting. My theory is, of course, now that you start, you're interacting with your family and your grandkids on Zoom so much for the last year, taking lessons online is no longer this kind of a, wow, well, what do I do on my computer?
Right.
It's more like, I know exactly how to use Zoom. I'm just going to go on there, click on this, and I'm there. So we've actually seen quite a big growth in the people who are over 60.
That's really interesting. I want to just point that out in that the necessity, it's like the repetition of probably connecting with family and friends and whatnot. And obviously we're making up the data here, but like we've been acculturated to it. I guess that's what we're looking for, right? And even into the white-haired, sort of. Wait, I've got gray hair, don't worry. Even into that sort of age category, right? Where it's the people who would classically be needing help. They're able to jump right in. That's fantastic. Great.
So that's been the biggest change we've seen for us on the technology side. For the language learning and the education, I mean, I know there are gimmicks out there to learn something in 30 days and you'll be fluent. We've never bought into that. Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
for everyone, I've been living in Mexico for 1.5 years, still not fluent. Okay.
Exactly. And that's kind of what we do. Learning languages work. Again, now that I have a son who's learning how to speak, that whole myth about, well, kids pick up languages so quick. Well, he's been working on it for 2 years, and right now he's starting to get sentences together. So yeah, maybe they're quicker than us adults, but still, it's even kids don't learn a language in a month, right? So it's not a realistic thing. So the education side hasn't been that difficult. This does tie into some of your next question, which was kind of student retention, and I'll even add in teacher retention into that. I'll start with the teacher retention because that was kind of initially one of our challenges. That's becoming less of a challenge. Because the main reason we would lose teachers in the beginning was they would not feel comfortable in this medium, right? It's like, I want to be in front of a classroom. I want to, do that. I really love this kind of feeling. And they still have it, but it's becoming less and less because they're just getting more used to this environment. And again, we can read body cues. We can see somebody's face. It works. We only give one-on-one classes. So it does work better for us in this one-on-one environment as opposed to group classes. It's not one teacher with 30 students and you're trying to make sure that guy's, and again, adults. So you have to make sure that kid is staying in his seat and he hasn't gone up somewhere. They're sitting there, they're staring at you. So that's helped us with the kind of keeping more teachers is this more the comfort they already have as far as, using technology. Then we add on top of that our support and, good salary. Most teachers are, grossly generalized here, they want to be able to teach because they love to do it. And then they want the stability on the back end, which is, these are the two things that we offer. We give you a medium to teach and we offer you the stability. You'll have work, you'll have that within even our limits. You set your own hours. So we have a lot of people who are our teachers who used to work at a school, but they come to us because they had kids and they now need to be able to start at 10 and get off at 2 because their kids get back from school. We'll give you, that's part-time, but yeah, we'll bring you in there. We'll work around you. You need to go pick up your skills. It's an emergency. We'll substitute in another teacher because we have hundreds of teachers. We'll coordinate it. We'll have another teacher take your class. So that's helped a lot with our retention. We've had some teachers, we've been around, 14 years now, for like 11 or 12 years, who've still been teaching with us.
Wow. That is amazing. Yeah,
we have a huge retention if they make it past 3 months.
So go to student retention, but then I want to come back to, let's just put a note on the board to how the heck have the logistics behind hundreds and hundreds of teachers and thousands of students, connecting them and those kinds of things. But tell me about student retention. What have you done, or what have you been seeing, at least over COVID, but over the past several years, about students being willing to stay with you for, to get to some kind of proficiency? Or why do they leave? Why do they not leave? Do you have data on that, those kinds of things?
Yes, we do. So progress and the perception of progress is probably the biggest reason that people stay with us after you go through their motivations. So big enough motivation, they stick with us, right? I'm marrying somebody from Mexico and I can't speak to my parent, my in-laws,
right?
Huge motivation. Those people tend to stick with us. That's not, unfortunately, something we can control that much. I guess I could tell my marketers, I'm like, find somebody who's going to get married in the next 9 months to a Spanish speaker and just show them Facebook ads. I mean, that would be wonderful. But unfortunately, that's not the way that our marketing works. But, one of the things that we do for the students is when they're studying with us, we give them a roadmap. All educators know this, right? So we essentially have a lesson plan. We customize it to them based on we give a free 30-minute class to start. And then we have our kind of pre-made roadmaps, but each teacher customizes it for the student's needs. And then we pass it on to the student. And they know, on average, this is how long it's going to take you to go. And these are the kind of topics we're going to be going through. And when you reach these points, we give real world usable milestones. It's not that, in the language learning field, for those who are familiar, A1, A2, C1, C2, they have all these kind of levels. If I tell a student you're going to be B2 in 6 months, they're like, I don't even know what that
that means nothing to me. Sure. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you say you can go to a restaurant and order within 30 days, which is, we actually start off with, if you come into us with zero Spanish, we actually kind of work into this, what we call, the basic survival levels, what we work the first 30, 60 days. You set your own hours. Usually it's about a 40 to 50 hour course, depending on your learning speed. And we say, by the time you're done with this, you can go to Mexico and ask for directions, go around, order food at the restaurant, understand the respances, all the rest of it. And we encourage
it's
them
real,
to test
tangible, and they're going to go to Cancun.
Go to the Mexican restaurant and order in Spanish. I mean, if you're in the U.S., there's a Mexican restaurant near you, and all the staff is Mexican, and they all speak Spanish. Go and use it. Sure, and we encourage them to do that, and they come back, and that's when they say to us, like, "Wow, I didn't really feel like I made progress, but I just went in there. I ordered my entire meal in Spanish. They answered me in Spanish. I got back to it. Sure, it's broken. You get the prepositions wrong. I mean, that doesn't matter." And those are the kinds of milestones we try to set for you. As you're going through our program, it's not, here's your grades, here's all the rest of it. We have a class log, we have a system, so you can actually see I studied this and I've checked off these check boxes. But I don't think that I know for a fact that's not what motivates most people, right? That's just like, I'm sure there's that odd student out there who just likes checking things off of their to-do list every day. That might be the motivation for them. But if you can give real life benefits, let's use the weight loss thing. I'm like, we're going to work out in 30 days and you need to lose 10 pounds. It's not the working out for 30 days that's encouraging to the person. It's the 10-pound loss at the end. And if you can guarantee that with a certain amount of probability, you have to put in the work. Like, as I said, we're not getting you there in 60 days if you don't show up to any of your classes. But if you put in the work, you will absolutely get there. And that keeps our retention up there. Because once they reach the first goal, we have another one. It's like, okay, you did that? Now how about we get up to the level where you can have a nice, conversation on the phone with your in-laws, and we customize those based on something that's meaningful to you or to whoever the student is. And that's worked really well for us. Retention, I would say, it's not a long-term game in language learning, because our job, I'll use the fitness analogy again, is to work ourselves out of a job.
Right. Sure.
If we get you to a certain level in whatever level you need in a language, you're not coming back to us, or you might come and take, once a week, just to kind of maintain your level. But we're not here to keep you hooked on us for the next 5 years. Again, 12 years of French lessons, and I can't speak a word. They got me hooked for 12 years, right? That's not what we're here for. We're not trying to get you to pay us for the next 12 years.
So now take me to that logistics. So, if we're surrounded by the Silicon Valley, let's have an app to do this, or let's have software, solve this problem for us kind of universe. It sounds to me, I know I had a conversation with my kids' school in Bangkok with their, there was a math teacher who was responsible for putting together the schedule every year of, what kids go in what classes and this and that. And there's software to that, but he was walking me through the complexity of everybody's got after school things and then prerequisites and blah, blah, you have maybe a few less variables, but you've got 11 languages, you've got hundreds of teachers, time zones, I'm even just those 4 variables in themselves, we now come up with millions of possibilities. How have you done it?
Yeah. So I'll go back to saying we bootstrapped it. And I also I was laughing because I relate to that story of having a big board. When we had the brick and mortar school, that was us. Like, which classrooms do the people fit in? And that was like every Friday. I remember doing that. So yeah, with the online school, it's different. So how did we build our online system? Remember, we bootstrapped this. So the first one, we made a website. I might be a computer programmer, but it's not, for some reason, it wasn't like the first thing that occurred to me was writing our own customer relationship management system. No, it was, let's just run the business. Version 1, we had Google Docs where every teacher we would create a new folder for in Google Drive, which with their name on it. We would create a new Excel document or whatever you call those in Excel, in Google Drive, where we would put the student name on it and they got to log it. And then I would go through every month and try to figure out, who was there. And when a teacher wanted to schedule, we had one Google Calendar. It was a mess. It was this huge thing. That's how we started.
Sounds horrific.
It was. That got us up to about 100 students. But the reason I bring it up is then I did write the CRM system, myself in Notepad, for our entire school. And I knew what system we needed to build because we had been doing every single thing manually for all this time. I know a lot of schools are actually, and educators are still in that position, right? Where it might be a mishmash of software that's out there, but there's not one little thing that fixes their problem. So I encourage them to look into building. If there's not something out there, build something for yourself. It's not as expensive or as complicated. With all the tools that are available today, it's not as bad, as it sounds. But from that, we built our own CRM system that does 90% of what we need to do. We do have our class coordinators who are kind of our logistic team that if you for some reason our system doesn't take care of it, you have email you can always go to take care of it. But with thousands of students, we get 100 emails a day, 200 emails a day. So it's like a very small percent. And that includes like new student inquiries and all the rest of it. So it's a very small percentage that have trouble with the system. Well, what our system does is pretty simple. It's where the teacher can go in there and log the classes that are given, which is how we calculate our hourly teachers' pays. And they give a report on what was given, which shows up in the students' history. So they can say, I studied this on last Friday, I studied this. Right. Any homework assignments they want are actually assigned in that system as well. We have a calendar that automatically detects your time zone and detects your teacher's time zone. It's usually one teacher, but if it's too complicated, we assign two or three teachers for you. And you just go in there and like, okay, I need a class next Friday. And, Javier is available. So you schedule the system, it sends out all the emails, the reminders, sets it in your Google Calendar, all that kind of stuff for you. And we've simplified the entire system a lot. That's how we're able to manage thousands of students with a relatively small staff of full-time employees, because the system's been pretty kind of ironed out over the last few years. The scheduling system is the big one. And we've ironed that out over the last few years. Also, I've memorized like time zones. I can tell you Nepal is 5.45 hours in front of, GMT and stuff like that. That was from my days of doing it manually. Our system takes care of all of that right now. And I'm very proud of it. And it simplifies our work a ton. I remember the days manually, we would use websites online to figure out time zones. Like, student wants class at 10 o'clock here. They are in, Malaysia, and our teacher is in Spain. And what time would it be that? And then go to their Google Calendar and see if they're available at that time. And it was tons and tons of fun.
That's amazing. Yeah. Final question I've got for you is, what are you looking forward to over the next, short-term horizon, 6 to 12 months? Is there a shiny new object? Is there an evolution in what you're offering? Are there new languages coming on board? Is there other technology or other people that you'd like to give a shout out to? What are you excited about?
Yeah, so the thing I'm excited about at Live Lingua itself is we've actually piloted the program now and had much better reception than even I expected. We've actually come up with an unlimited Spanish lessons program. It's kind of higher ticket buy-in, but there's a few things that that might come out of it. So right now we're selling it for like $1,500, unlimited Spanish lessons for a year, which if you break down, it's like $120 a month or something like that.
Yeah,
so it's actually
great.
But we require you pay 1 year up front. So there's two things that we're trying to avoid. One, we don't want to waste our teachers' time by, somebody pays for a month and then just blasts like 50 hours and it's not necessarily the most effective way to learn. We're also getting more commitment from the student. If you just dished out $1,500 to learn Spanish, you're probably going to show up for your class, right? And so we want the student to have success, and that's why we've launched the program. So I'm really excited, and to see where that takes us. This kind of getting more dedicated students. It's like pre-vetting the students, that you make sure that we only get the people who are very serious instead of the people who are just trying to come in. We have a lot of students right now who do come in for like 2 or 3 hours and they lose their motivation. So hopefully this price point will get them their motivation back, and help them learn. So that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to in this coming year. And we're expanding our team of full-time teachers and quite a bit this year. And we're really excited to do that, kind of having the different time zones. And the cool thing about the full-time versus the hourly ones is we can now bring them into our culture. If you're hourly, you kind of feel like I'm a contractor. I work when I want and all the rest of it. But you're there, we want to have all hands meetings. So we can bring them all together and we can meet each other and we can have these, all that kind of stuff. We've had a few of those with a few staff that we brought on already, a few teachers, and the energy is totally different in the company.
That's awesome.
So I'm really, really excited to see what that's going to take us in the next 6 to 12 months, because we're pushing that pretty hard right now in order to kind of account for our growth and hopefully take us to the next level. But we're always going to stay virtual. So I'm never going to have a big building, not only virtual for us, but for our teachers. They can work from their house. They can work from the beach, assuming you find a high-speed internet connection on a beach somewhere. But, we don't care that much. Be professional about it. But, some of our teachers used pre-COVID would just travel through Latin America or around the world while they were working for us. And we want to give them that freedom. That's freedom we have as a team. And I'd like to give it to other people as well.
Fantastic. Ray, you are the founder of Lingua, a company that teaches 11 most popular languages online. You are, you have an empire out there. I encourage everybody to go check it out if you want to learn. What is it? Spanish, German? I don't want it. We don't have to go through all 11.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm like,
yeah. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I think the next time we speak, it will have to be in Querétaro, and over a glass of wine, my friend.
Absolutely, Laddick. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the e-learning podcast. If you like what you heard, please do me the favor of following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whichever social media you prefer. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper on e-learning, I encourage you to get your free ticket to the e-learning success summit, where there are more than 70 hours of presentations on best practices. Just go to elearningsuccesssummit.com. And then finally, for the latest news, information, and resources about e-learning, come subscribe to our newsletter at lmspulse.com. Thanks.